Yo, what's up? Ladies and gentlemen,
Motorsport 411 presents
all the four- and two-wheeled action.
Motorsport 411 with Sean Cardovillis.
Welcome to Motorsport 411, your home for all your four- and two-wheel action in Africa. Coming up in this episode, we round up the World Rally Championship Croatia Rally with the voice of rally, Colin Clark. And we find out all about the 4x4 challenge with the Kenya Racing Team Chairman, George Njoroge.
All the four- and two-wheeled action. Motorsport 411.
Welcome to the show. So the World Rally Championship was in Croatia last weekend, and it was Elfyn Evans who won the event, followed by Oyt Tanak and Esapeka Lappi. In the drivers' standings, it's Sebastian Ogier and Elfyn Evans who are joint leaders on 69 points. 1 point behind on 68 is the reigning world champion Kalle Rovanperä, and on 65 points it's Oyt Tanak, the 2019 world champion. And rounding off the top 5 is Thierry Neuville with 58 points. Let's get more news, including his reaction to the death of Craig Breen. It is the voice of rally, Colin Clark. Colin, thank you so much for speaking to us on Motorsport 411. You're in Adelaide, well, the south of Australia. What are you doing there?
It's always lovely to hear your voice, Sean. Yeah, rallying, always rallying. There's a rally in a small town called Burra in South Australia, and it's a fantastic event. It runs over 2.5 days. 430 kilometers, classic cars, proper Australian outback. It's just a wonderful event. So I'm covering that in South Australia this week and having a lot of fun as always.
A lot of travelling for you, Colin. You've just come from the Croatia Rally, the WRC Croatia Rally. A very emotional time for the World Rally Championship following the death of Craig Breen. First of all, your thoughts on his death?
Yeah, Craig was a lovely guy. He was a really good friend of mine, and it was a tragedy that stopped us all in our tracks. It's a long time since we lost a top-line driver in the WRC. It's nearly 50 years. We lost poor Michael Park nearly 20 years ago as a co-driver. A long time since the driver passed away. And, Craig was a really good friend of mine, and he was a friend of a lot of people because he was such a lovely guy. He was down to earth. He loved his motorsport. He loved rallying. His enthusiasm for rallying was really infectious. And he was, someone said to me, he said, look, Craig, he talked like one of us and he drove like one of them. And I thought, yeah, that sums Craig up. He was one of us. He was a rally fan at heart. He was an absolute passionate rally fan who was living his dream, and his dream was to drive rally cars. And it didn't matter if it was, a top of the line Rally 1 car, which he drove brilliantly in Sweden just a couple of months ago. Or, a classic car from the 80s and 90s that he drove back on the tarmac roads back home in Ireland. He just took enormous joy from rallying and gave enormous joy to an awful lot of people. And the news of his death shocked so many of us because, he was friends with so many people. There wasn't a single person who had a bad word to say about Craig. And he always had time for everyone, for fans, for media. Media job in motorsport can be quite hard at times, and Craig made it easy for us media folks because he was a joy. He was a complete joy. He was fun. He loved his rallying. He loved competing and going fast, and he loved talking about it. And yeah, he was just too young to leave us, sadly. But yeah, as I say, the Rally Croatia was a different kind of rally because of the atmosphere, and because obviously there were so many people wanting to pay tribute to Craig and to Craig's memory. And I think it was done really nicely at Croatia. There was a lot of dignity in the tributes that were paid to Craig. And there's absolutely no question that Craig would have wanted the rally to go ahead. His family very much wanted the rally to go ahead and for Hyundai to compete. And the drivers talked to Craig's mum and dad over the weekend before. And, Craig's mum in particular said to them, boys, what you have to do is enjoy your rallying. So many of you just seem so upset, so uptight, so angry at times. Craig was never like that. Craig was always just an absolute joy, even when things weren't going well. And his mum said to them, look, boys, you're 6 or 7 of you in the world. There are millions of kids that want to be rally drivers, and only 6 or 7 of you can be rally drivers. So go out and enjoy it. And you know what? They listened to Craig's mum, and it was touching, really touching to see the drivers really, in difficult times, really difficult times, just trying to show that, yeah, they know how lucky they are, and that they know that they have to go out and enjoy the sport, and to enjoy it for Craig. And it was as I say, it was dignified and really fitting for Craig, the way that really everyone behaved last week in Croatia.
Colin, I've had a lot of time to dwell on this, and, motorsports is a dangerous sport. I think what was really strange was the way the crash happened. Obviously we don't want to dwell too much into the crash, but we did see the human side of the drivers throughout the weekend. Some very, very emotional words from the likes of Oit Tanak, Esapaki Lappi. It really showed the human side of the drivers.
It did, and that shows what our sport's like. Rallying is different from other motorsports. These guys spend a lot of time together, whether you're in the same team or on opposing teams. You spend a lot of time together on the recce's, on the road sections during the rallies, and there's a massive respect for each other. They're competitive. They're all ultra competitive. They want to win, but they all get on, and they all have a huge amount of respect. And there are genuine friendships right throughout the service park with the drivers. And, all of those drivers lost a really great friend 2 weeks ago. And you just can't imagine. You can't imagine having to go and give 100% commitment, focus, during a rally when you've got that in the back of your mind. But they all did it, and they all did it, really, really well. And I think, we should be proud of the way our drivers performed in Croatia, because really difficult circumstances, and they all did brilliantly well.
All right, let's go on to the rally itself. And Thierry Neuville almost had the rally in the bag, and that would have been a great tribute to Breen. And once again, another mistake for him.
Yeah, you know what? I feel for Thierry Neuville. We look at the Hyundai, and the Hyundai's clearly come a long way. We saw the car first in Monte Carlo 15 months ago, and it looked impossible to drive. It was really a long way short of where it should be, and they managed to develop that car throughout last year, and it got easier to drive, and it got more competitive. But it's still not an easy car to drive, and to win rallies, Neuville has to keep that car on the edge. And when you're on the edge 100% of the time, you're just waiting. You're waiting for something to go wrong. And Neuville, he's a brawler. He's a battler, and he battles that car, and he was desperate, as you say, to win the event last week as a tribute to Craig. And he was in not a bad position. He was under a little bit of pressure when he put the car off. But he was fighting the car the whole time, and it wasn't easy. And yeah, it was a mistake. There's no question he made a mistake in that corner. But I wouldn't be critical of Neuville at all, because he's getting more out of that car. And Andrea Adamo said that regularly when he was in charge of Hyundai. Neuville was the one that kept Hyundai in the hunt for the manufacturer's titles, because he was the one that pushed that car beyond really what it should have been delivering, beyond what it was capable of. He pushed the car. He was prepared to take the risks, and he got results. And occasionally, he made mistakes, but you have to expect that. The car's not right, and it's clearly not right yet for Neuville. He keeps pushing the team, pushing the engineers, but it's not quite right yet, and mistakes happen. And it was just really, really unfortunate, because he was in the lead, and I think his lead had been reduced a little bit by, I think it was Elvin Evans had reduced his lead to around about 10 seconds, but he was still very much controlling the rally. But mistakes happen. You can't get every corner, every breaking point right when you're on the edge the whole time. So I felt very sorry for Thierry, because he was very, very desperate to deliver that result for the team and for Craig.
It's a tough one for Hyundai because, yes, Neuville is right up there. But do you think the mistakes are cropping up a little bit too often?
No, I don't. I really don't. He's had a decent start to the year. He had 3 podiums to start the year. So, that's a good start. And he was in a strong position. And he's still not in a bad position in terms of the championship. He's only, 11 points off. We've got a remarkable situation in the championship where the top 5 drivers are separated by 11 points. What is it? 1 point separating our top 3 drivers effectively, because we've got 2 drivers on joint points at the top of the table. No, it's early in the season, and it's a mistake, and these things happen. Neville can't afford too many more mistakes, and that's difficult with the issues that I've described with the car. It's difficult not to make any further mistakes, but he can't afford too many mistakes. What's working in his favour is that rallies are being won by Ogier this year, who will not contest the whole championship, and rallies are being won by other drivers. It's not one driver dominating the championship. So if you make a mistake, you're still in it. If you make a mistake in one rally, you're still in it. If you make a mistake in 2 or 3 rallies, you can forget your chances. But things are so tight just now that even although Neville did make that mistake, he's still very much there. 11 points is nothing in terms of this year's championship.
Now, we got an interesting scenario at Toyota where we had Elfyn Evans, who was not scoring manufacturers' points this weekend as a tribute to the late Craig Breen. A brilliant rally by him, but a very interesting scenario between the 3 drivers there. Yeah, it was. At the start of the rally, you can absolutely see why. It was a lovely gesture by Toyota. They didn't have to do that. They didn't have to deselect one of their manufacturer scoring drivers. They could have kept all 3 drivers as manufacturer point scoring drivers. But because obviously Hyundai were only fielding 2 cars, they decided to deselect one driver, and 99.9% of the experts would have said you got it right. You had to have Ogier as your number 1 pick, if you like, and Robin Perra probably, almost certainly, as your number 2. So they did the right thing in saying, okay, Elfyn, in terms of manufacturer points, you won't score. He was still obviously scoring driver points, but it just didn't work out for them, did it? Stage 2, both Robin Perra and Ogier picking up punctures, and it dropped them right out to the battle for the win, sadly. And Elfyn wasn't the fastest driver over the weekend, but he was the most clever driver. He stayed out of trouble on a rally which was so difficult, really probably the most challenging tarmac stages we've seen in a very, very long time. Very muddy, very tight, broken tarmac, lots of broken edges to the tarmac. So your strategy to avoid punctures was one that you had to think about. And Elfyn was clever. He knew his pace wasn't ultimately where he wanted it to be, but he also knew if he didn't make any mistakes, his pace was good enough for him to capitalize on others making mistakes. And that's exactly what he did. And when he found himself in the lead, he drove a really clever race to finish, on top of the standings. And it was a great result for him. It was his first win since Finland, 18 months ago or something like that, a long time ago. And it was a great, more than that, 2 and a bit years, wasn't it? It was a long time ago anyway since he won a rally. And it'll do him the world of good, because he struggled last year with that Rally 1 car. And a lot of questions being asked as to whether or not, he would have to change his driving style to adapt to these new cars. But he's just worked away at it. He hasn't got frustrated. He's stuck at it. He's worked away at it, and he's found a more comfortable feeling in that car. And I think Elfyn Evans can now push on from here. And he will be a proper challenger this year. Elfyn Evans, by the time we get to the last couple of rallies of the year, will be right in the fight for the driver's title this year. The 2019 world champion Ott Tänak telling your company, in fact, your media, Dirtfish, that he hasn't found a sweet spot yet for the Ford. Your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's frightening, because when he did find it, and he found it for 3 or 4 stages during the rally, and he was blindingly fast. Ott Tänak is still right up there in terms of pace. You have to say Cali Robin Perra. You'd argue maybe even Ogier is the fastest driver out there just now, but Tänak in a car that suits him is difficult to beat. He's difficult to beat, and he's not been in that situation really since his championship winning year in Toyota. And in his championship winning year in Toyota, he was an intimidating driver. He went into every stage knowing he could win every stage, every rally he could win. And he frightened the other drivers almost with his reliability and his pace and his relentlessness. And if, and it will happen, if M Sport get that car to his liking, he will be a force to be reckoned with. He already is. He's putting together a fantastic campaign so far, with the win in Sweden, with the second place in Croatia, and even in Mexico, where he had a really difficult run in the car. He still managed to score a decent amount of points with the power stage points that he picked up. So he's going about things in a really clever way. He's scoring where he can. He's not making any mistakes. And when that car is to his liking, he will be really, really difficult to beat, because we know the car's fast. They need to iron out the few little niggling reliability problems they've got. They have to get the setup to Tanak's liking. When those things come together, watch out, because he will be blindingly fast. There is no question about that.
All right, just less than 2 months. In fact, this week, it would be 2 months to the WRC Safari Rally. We've got a couple of events in between. But for the Safari, we saw how Toyota did their homework last year, particularly with the Fesh and, of course, the black cotton, what they call the black cotton, which really undid a lot of drivers on the Saturday of the rally. No doubt, Hyundai and Ford would be trying to do their homework just like Toyota did last year.
Yeah, you have to be prepared. The Safari is such a unique event that you have to be prepared. Now, you can't test when we've got the long haul events, you can't test even on the continent. So how do you test? How do you replicate conditions in Kenya? Well, it's very difficult. And as you say, you've got to have team personnel who know what to expect. You've got to have the car set up. You've got to maybe add a few little extras to the car to allow your car to deal with the Fesh, the black cotton, whatever it might be. But, a lot of that's dependent on the weather. If the weather comes in, it comes down to, yes, the way the car is prepared by the teams, but then how the drivers cope with the weather. And it's the clever, experienced drivers that cope with those really, really ridiculously slippery and treacherous conditions that will do well on the Safari this year. Okay, we've seen a few big rain showers over the last couple of years, but we've not seen any really bad weather yet, have we? And I always like a little bit of weather just to spice things up, but we don't need that in Kenya because the stages are so challenging anyway. That's kind of what I like about the Safari Rally. Strategy is something in terms of strategic approaches from drivers. It's something we've lost in rallying. Rallies have become sprints. It's the fastest driver. You're flat out the whole time. And the strategic thinking, the strategic approach has been slightly lost. But rallies like Kenya reintroduce that, where you do have to think about strategy, about your tyre approach, about which sections of the stage you can attack, which sections of the stage you maybe have to be more defensive in. So yeah, all of that's about, as you say, preparation. And Toyota got it right last year, and they get it right just about every year. But I expect the teams to be very evenly matched because they all know what to expect this year in Kenya. And we'll probably get to Kenya and it'll pour rain for 4 days and it'll be fantastically exciting.
We're really, really looking forward to seeing you, Colin. Just finally, Colin, a parting shot, your thoughts on the late Craig Breen.
He will be much missed. He really will. And there'll be a little bit of Craig Breen with all of us for the rest of our lives, because anyone who was lucky enough to meet Craig were blessed. And I was blessed in that he was a friend of mine, and he made my life better, and he made the lives of so many people that he met better. And there aren't many world-class sporting stars who do that. And Craig just had the common touch. He was just such a good lad. He was at heart a very gentle soul, and that gentle soul will be enormously missed in the world of motorsport, and in particular the world of rallying. And and he has friends all around the world who will miss him dreadfully. But he'll live on, and his legacy will live on. He inspired an awful lot of youngsters to get into the sport because he was so approachable. He was so likeable. His enthusiasm was so infectious. And there'll be kids that are coming through in our sport for 10, 20, 30 years who were inspired by Craig Breen. So his legacy will live on, that's for sure. And no one will ever forget Craig Breen. Anyone who met him, you will never ever forget that easy smile, those beautiful eyes. He had beautiful blue sparkling eyes. He had a wonderful charm and a wonderful wit about him, and just a wonderfully disarming way about him that made you feel comfortable. And no one will forget Craig, because he was such a wonderful person. A huge loss, just a huge loss.
Colin Clark, the voice of rally, thank you so much for speaking to us, as always, on Motorsport 411.
It's been my pleasure and my joy. Thank you for having me on it. We'll
be back.
All the 4- and 2-wheeled action.
Motorsport 411.
Welcome back. Now, 4x4 challenges have become extremely popular over the last few years as a budget alternative to the annual Rhino charge. George Njoroge is the chairman of the Kenya racing team. George, thank you very much for speaking to us on Motorsport 411. You're the chairman of the Kenya racing team. You had an event over the weekend. How did that go?
Well, it was the second round of the Kenya National 4x4 Challenge Championship, which was held in Meru. And it had a massive entry. And on this, I'm seeing now 4x4 is becoming a popular event in our calendar. And we have another 3 remaining rounds, which one will be held by the WRC and the KRT. We'll have another 2 events by the end of the calendar.
All right. You are in the calendar, the Kenya Motorsports Federation calendar. You seem to have noticed a niche. It's become very popular. How did you get into it?
Well, I started this maybe back in 2017 when I used to just call people we have mud fans. Yeah, at Champagne Park. Now, that time the club was not affiliated to KNSF, the federation. I continued just approached the federation, and they came up with the idea that Kenya Racing Team should be affiliated. That was back in 2020. So after that, now we had our first championship in 2023 and 2022, where it's inclusive in the calendar. And also Kenya Racing Team managed also to do one autocross in 2022. 2023, now we have a Kenya National Rally Championship, which will be the first event for Kenya Racing Team to host.
Fantastic. Just tell us in regards to the off-road, the different categories and how it works.
Well, we have 4 categories. Where we start with the beginning of this is the age group from year from 10 to about 16. Then now we have the intermediate, and then we have the experts and the super experts. On the intermediate is a bit cheaper to run in, as the car just have just a simple rocket, and the other expert, the car has to have proper roll cage, yeah. And then you have the super experts, where the super experts, it's a special modified car, where we allow even use the potward zones, you can use bigger tires and such, where the intermediate can't use the potward zone. On the beginner side, it's very encouraging, because by the end of the day, it caught me up. And then this year we came up with the Kids Academy, where we have the age group from 8 to 16 years. When the beginner category was the champion for the last 2 years, the 10-year-old boy, where his name is Monene Gitao. So Gitao I somehow mix up the names. And when I saw the following of the 10-year-old boy, I came up with this idea to open an academy, where we'll have 6 sessions running this year. Already we've done the first one. Very encouraging. I had about 15 students, and also some of my drivers who compete in the intermediate and expert, they came out there to help, and they are ready to continue with it. So it's a good startup.
In fact, one of your members of the academy is taking part in his first autocross this weekend.
Yeah. Now he's after he's won the 2 consecutive championship in the beginner category. Now he's moved up to now autocross. So we have now another 3 of them, which are competing this year. That's Ian, and we have Olivier, and also another newcomer, Ahmed. So in that category, I know by the end of the season after we change, we'll have a massive entry in the beginner category.
It's very interesting to see the entries in your events. It's actually quite different to the regular motorsport entrance, huh?
Yeah, sure. I get about almost 20 of them in different categories. This one, you see, the main thing of this event is we are concentrated on just one area, and also it's for also spectators. We don't move out to one area; we just move around in one ground. So even for sponsors, although we don't have a sponsor at the moment, we'll encourage them to come and display. Yeah, I think so. The entry. Most of the guys, they can't afford now to do the rhino charge. So that's why they come now to enjoy. They have built their cars. They're just sitting in the garage. There's nothing to do. So it's very, very, very encouraging for them to come to just a close event very near Njoroge, because we are just here in Kanyottu. Yeah, that's where our grounds are. And we have a big space. We can change the courses anytime we want. Anyhow, we have a riverbed. So they really enjoy coming to the event.
George, from your point of view, where do you see this going? You said, okay, you're going to be organizing a KNRC event as well. In terms of the off-roading, how far do you see this going?
Well, definitely, Sean, this one I know it's going far, and with the entries I'm having, we want to push it. We want to we see whether we can go even invite people from outside, let's say TZ, Uganda. They have started approaching us. How does it go? So I'm seeing us going far with this event, and hopefully it will work by next year when we'll have a lot of entries in the same, and let's hope to be recognized in Africa also.
Have you got some results from the weekend on you?
All right. We had an entry over 15 entrants of where in the beginning category we had 3, and the overall winner was Ian, followed by Olivier. This Olivier is also a 10-year-old boy. In the intermediate category, we had Andres and first. In the expert category, we had the property Cham. And then also in the super expert category, I know you remember this guy very well, John Kanyari, who is very supportive in this 4x4 challenge event. And also I'd like to know Kanyari, he had a big entry from his side. He had 3 entries, where his daughter, who was competing in the intermediate, came up second in the intermediate category.
Fantastic. George, you're also an assistant clerk of the course for the forthcoming WRC Safari Rally. How's it going so far, less than 2 months now to the event?
Well, the WRC, I think everything is ongoing. The supplementary regulation, the FIA have approved the regulation. So that means we're ready to go with everything. The experts from the UK, that's Ian Campbell and Gerald, they were here for the week. They left there on Saturday. They have gone through the route and approved everything. Only a few changes. Already we've removed the Narasha stage, which will be compensated by Meru this time round. So, and also the Njoroge stage, it's being increased by another 3 kilometers. All the other stages will run the same like last year.
I guess when you were looking at the stages, it was, a delicate balance. You don't want too much fesh that's going to give the Rally 1 cars too many problems. It's trying to keep the manufacturers happy, but also the character of the Safari Rally alive.
Well, that one is big, thanks to Govi, the clerk of the court, and the first stage has been removed and it's been diverted, where now the stage will be less, will be less than 3 kilometers, I think so. That's on Anoa and their Gopi was on it, and we are not touching very that into the fresh sauce. There's no fresh in here.
All right, George Njoroge, of course, the chairman of the Kenya racing team. Thank you so much for speaking to us on Motorsport 411.
Thank you very much, Sean. Thank you, Phil.
We'll be back.
Motorsports 411 with Sean Cardovillis.
So that's it for the show this week. Our thanks once again to the voice of rally, Colin Clark, the chairman of the Kenya racing team, George Njoroge. Our thanks as always to Big City Studio. I'm Sean Cardovillis. See you next week.